Once again, it's time to take a trip back to 1965. So without further ado, let's dive into some standout British singles that hit the scene in May of that year. Let's begin.
Go anywhere for something new.
May 1965 saw the release of The Who's second single. Beat Instrumental magazine wrote,
Pop art. That's how The Who's new record is described. It's a sort of musical action painting. Everything happens where it's least expected. There are touches of I can't explain, weird drum breaks, and funny feedback noises. In fact, it's just like The Who are on stage. Will it be a hit? Either that or a fantastic flop.
The release of the single sparked a sort of pop art craze within the British music scene, with many music publications writing articles about it and explaining its meaning to their readers. Rave magazine reported,
Everybody's talking pop art. Suddenly it's in to be pop art minded. Wear pop art clothes, visit a pop art club, and listen to pop art music now and again. To the in crowd who knew about these things ages before anyone else, pop art suggests things such as The Who, the Pontiac Club, Putney, and the Palisades Boutique in the West End. And as far as the pop scene's concerned, The Who are the trendsetters this time. The Who started their pop art craze because they wanted their gear to look constantly new and different, so they began sticking targets onto sweaters, black sellotape onto white belts, making shirts from curtains, and a jacket from a Union Jack. The general idea of pop art is to place something out of context, like wearing a camouflage jacket to look conspicuous, or a Union Jack when you're not the slightest bit patriotic. The Who use a lot of optical art as well. Optical art, also known as op art, is the use of stark geometric patterns, usually black and white shapes and lines that dazzle.
This single was quite a revolutionary record. Driven by Pete Townshend's pioneering use of guitar feedback and Keith Moon's explosive drumming, the chaotic feedback-laced rave-up that erupts during the middle section of the song sounded like nothing else from that period, boldly pushing the sonic boundaries of rock and roll to new heights. The B-side was an excellent cover of Daddy Rolling Stone by Otis Blackwell.
I'm Daddy Rolling Stone.
The single became a big success, reaching number 10 in Britain and remaining 11 weeks in the top 40. In the States, however, the single failed to chart.
Set me free, little girl. All you gotta do is set me free, little girl.
Currently at number 9, it's The Kinks that Set Me Free.
May 1965 also brought the release of an outstanding single from the Kinks. Their previous effort had been something of a letdown, both commercially and creatively, but this new 45 marked a strong comeback, featuring two top-notch tracks. Set Me Free showcased a softer and more introspective side of the band, while the B-side returned to the raw, distorted sound that had defined some of their earlier hits.
I need you more than birds in the sky.
The New Musical Express wrote,
A characteristic raucous guitar introduction leads into Set Me Free, which is considerably slower than the Kinks' previous offering, only just above rockaballad pace. Composer Ray Davies dual tracks, with falsetto chanting from the other boys, and there's some vital raw guitar work. Melody content is not so hot though, and it's not so kinky as usual. The lyric is extremely repetitive, and drums into the mind so forcibly that the disc must register. On this score alone, it should do better than their last. Tempo speeds for Ray's solo voice, I Need You, more in their familiar pattern, with rattling tambourine, might have been the better A-side.
The single reached number 9 in Britain and also became a decent hit in several European countries. In the States, Set Me Free reached number 23 according to Billboard. The single reached its highest chart position in Canada, where it managed to climb to number 2.
We did kiss in love and now we're two.
Both sides of this single by The Click could be described as early examples of freak beat, and it's quite startling that this excellent single is not as well known as many other 45s from that period.
Other people tell us we should do.
Nobody used the term freak beat in the 60s, but it's a term that is now used to describe the sort of mid-60s tracks that featured mod or rhythm and blues groups experimenting with different sounds or song structures and moving towards less conventional material both from a lyrical and musical point of view. So the term freak beat is therefore used to describe the sort of songs that seemed to bridge the sounds of the mid-60s and the more psychedelic sounds from 1966 and especially 1967. As previously stated, both sides of this single by The Click could be described as early examples of freak beat. The A-side of the single, with its unusually long and eccentric title, stood out thanks to its unconventional structure and unexpected rhythm changes, setting it apart from many of the modern rhythm and blues 45s of the era. Later in 1966, the Troggs lifted the opening guitar effect from the intro of the song and incorporated it into the intro of Wild Thing. The B-side was another outstanding track, arguably just as good if not better than the A-side.
I write a letter to you, sweet girl, and seal it with a loving kiss. I hope that I may see you soon, then I can tell you why.
It maintained a sound that was reminiscent of many modern rhythm and blues singles from that period, but at the same time it also saw the band moving away from the traditional melodies and riffs that defined those styles. Unfortunately, Pi Records did a poor job promoting the single, and despite receiving a few good reviews in the music press, the single inevitably went unnoticed and failed to chart. Both sides of the single, however, were rediscovered years later when they were featured on compilations of overlooked mod and freakbeat gems from the 60s. May 1965 saw the release of the Hollies' 9th single and their first to reach the #1 spot in Britain. The New Musical Express wrote,
From the pen of the Game of Love composer Clint Ballard comes another obvious winner in I'm Alive. It's the perfect foil for the Hollies, with their full enveloping sound and appealing harmonies. Lead singer dual tracks, with the other boys chanting in support. The rhythms particularly stimulating, with the drummer's double-time gallop contrasting most effectively with the stolid thumps of the tambourine.
The track showed the Hollies' ability to take outside material and make it sound distinctly their own, thanks to their harmonies and arrangements. I'm Alive was originally offered to a group called the Toggery Five, but it was the Hollies who recorded it in the end, a decision that proved to be a smart one as the single became a major hit. I'm Alive reached #1 in Britain and stayed at the top for 3 weeks, and the song was also a top 10 hit in the Netherlands, Norway, Ireland and Germany. In the States, on the other hand, the single didn't do as well and only peaked at number 85.
Some things just stick in your mind.
The story of Vashti Bunyan feels like something out of a Hollywood film. Vashti Bunyan was a folk singer from London who was discovered by Rolling Stones manager Andrew Oldham in early 1965. And this was her only single for Decca Records, and also her only release under Oldham's management. The A-side of the single was a track written especially for her by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, and it featured Jimmy Page on acoustic guitar. Record Mirror wrote,
Highly promising disc from the new folk girl, protege of Andrew Oldham, a Mick Jagger and Keith Richards song. Eventually, it's all down to simple voice and simple guitar. It grows on us fast. Miss Vashti could easily dance gently into the charts. The song is neatly atmospheric.
The B-side was a self-penned song called I Want to Be Alone.
But sometimes I have to be alone, somewhere on my own.
Andrew Oldham truly believed in Vashti's talent, and he did a great job promoting the single. He managed to get the press to write articles about her and secured reviews in most of the major music publications in Britain. Oldham even managed to get her an appearance on Shindig, one of the most popular pop television shows in the States. However, her awkward and shy attitude during her appearance on Shindig perfectly explains the next chapter in Vashti's story. Vashti Bunyan felt like an outsider in the pop world. She was simply too shy and awkward to become a starlet, and she felt uncomfortable being in the spotlight. It seemed pretty clear that the commercial music industry, with its demands for constant promotion and attention, didn't suit her personality or artistic vision. So the singer decided to leave the music business altogether after the release of the single. After stepping away from the music industry, Vashti Bunyan essentially lived a life similar to that of a 19th century nomad, and she embarked on a journey with her boyfriend Robert Lewis across the British countryside, traveling on horseback.
1968. This horse-drawn caravan was home for Robert and Vashti Lewis, a way to realize the ideal of a simpler, gentler life.
Her experiences during that period of her life influenced her to write the songs that would eventually be featured on the album that marked her return to music, Just Another Diamond Day, released in 1970. The album, which featured collaborations from members of Fairport Convention, remained largely forgotten for several years, with Bunyan essentially disappearing from the music scene. However, in the early 2000s, her album gained cult status after being rediscovered by new generations of music lovers. The album's success among this new generation of music fans was so significant that Bunyan returned to performing in the early 2000s. She even went on to release new material, and she's still active to this day. The singer is now considered a highly influential figure in folk music, and Just Another Diamond Day is hailed as a freak folk masterpiece.
And now for something completely different.
Get the train, get the moving. Well, he's in a hole, but I just couldn't let her go.
Another highlight from May 1965 was this single by Screaming Lord Sutch. Both sides of the record featured some great wild guitar by future Deep Purple member Ritchie Blackmore, whose lead guitar style and tone were quite ahead of their time. At this point, apart from working as a session musician, Blackmore was also a member of Screaming Lord Sutch and the Savages. The group had just undergone a new lineup change, and it now featured 4 sax players, achieving a killer sound that was further enhanced by producer Joe Meek. The A-side was an excellent cover of Train Kept A-Rolling, and the B-side was a cover of Honey Hush by Big Joe Turner. The track also featured some great fiery licks by Ritchie Blackmore. Screaming Lord Sutch achieved notoriety in the very early 60s for blending rock and roll with horror-themed theatrics. And he was also known for his extremely long hair, something completely unusual in 1961. Even though it was never a hit, Jack the Ripper became his signature tune and the song he will always be associated with. But Sutch kept releasing some good singles throughout the 60s, and this was one of his best from that period, and his final single with Joe Meek as a producer. Despite their inability to score a hit on the charts, Sutch and the Savages enjoyed enormous popularity in clubs and ballrooms all over Britain. Sutch was never taken too seriously, and his stage act and music were seen by many as just a gimmick or a joke. But he always remained faithful to his rock and roll roots and his vision, and he's now widely regarded as one of the pioneers of shock rock and a major influence on artists such as Alice Cooper.
Yellow is the color of my true love's hair in the morning when we rise, in the morning when we rise.
Donovan released his second single in May 1965. Colours was an intimate and wistful folk song, very much in the vein of Bob Dylan, to whom Donovan was often compared during this early period of his career. The lyrics were simple but deeply evocative, using colour symbolism to describe a relationship and the emotional aftermath of its end. Beat Instrumental magazine wrote,
"Our Mr. Leach has done it again. His new record has the same haunting appeal as Catch the Wind, together with a brand new melody that's very hard to forget. Titled Colours, it will surely establish Donovan as one of the biggest names of 1965. The session was held at Pye's No. 2 studio at Marble Arch. The A-side was completed in 3 takes without any dubbing whatsoever. Apart from Donovan's guitar, the only other instrument on Colours was the double bass of ex-Shadow Licorice Locking, who also plays on Donovan's first LP, due to be released shortly. Manager Jeff Stevens said, "The session was a real gas. Everything went perfectly. I believe it's a good follow-up because it's a great song, sung in Donovan's distinctive style." Like the A-side, Don also wrote the B-side.
Call out to me as I ramble by, I'll sing a song for you.
Called To Sing For You, it's a slow, lyrical little ballad featuring Donovan with his guitar.
The single became a big hit, reaching number 4 in Britain and staying in the top 40 for 11 weeks. In the United States, however, Colours reached number 61, marking a decline in popularity compared to Catch the Wind, which had peaked at number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100.
We meet every night at 8, and I don't get home till 8. I say to myself each day, baby, oh long, long live love.
Another single which became a big hit in Britain but did nothing in the States was this 45 by Sandy Shaw, which became her second single to top the charts in the UK. Long Live Love was a fantastic Chris Andrews composition that mixed pop with Caribbean music. This was a period when calypso music gained a bit of popularity in Britain, and this track was one of several contemporary hits with a so-called bayou beat, a syncopated duple meter rhythm, which could also be heard on hits from the first half of 1965, such as Concrete and Clay by Unit 4+2 and It's Not Unusual by Tom Jones. The New Musical Express wrote,
After a ballad-style opening with strumming guitar, Long Live Love breaks into a throbbing calypso-type beat with hand claps. Sandy's in great form, displaying a degree of maturity not apparent on her previous discs, and with one of Chris Andrews' best compositions at her command, I expect this to climb very high, could even make number 1. The melody is simple and easily assimilated, the title is strong, the interpretation is haunting, and the infectious Latin-flavored rhythm highlights an imaginative backing.
Sandy Shaw recorded the single in several languages such as French, German, Italian, and Spanish. The single became a worldwide hit, reaching number 1 in Britain and also becoming a top 10 hit in several European countries. The single also reached number 1 in New Zealand, number 12 in Australia, number 2 in South Africa, and number 6 in Canada. In the States, however, the single only managed to reach number 97, marking the third and last time that a Sandy Shaw single entered the Billboard Hot 100. I hope you enjoyed this trip back to May 1965. See you next time.